We'll give about 30 more seconds or so. People are still popping in. Are you ready, Bob?
Sure am. Can you hear me okay?
Yep.
Good.
And we're getting a slew of people here. Okay, I think we're ready to go. And while we get Bob's screen and so forth up there, I will welcome everybody to this virtual illustrated lecture from the Friends of Fort Hunter. We thank you for joining us. I am Barbara Dennison from the board, and I want to also take a moment to thank Katie, our tech person from Dauphin County Parks and Rec, who makes all of the stuff happen behind the scenes that none of, I know myself and plenty of the other people necessarily know how to do. So thank you, Katie. I want to remind people of a couple upcoming things. The holidays at Fort Hunter, there are all sorts of events starting the end of November, running through the third weekend in December. And you can look at the Fort Hunter website, which I have in the chat function for you, to find out about all of that information on various events, and especially about the St. Thomas Dulcimer Society concert, which is on Wednesday, December 6th, starting at 6:30 p.m. in the Fort Hunter Centennial Barn. And we'll probably reference that a couple other times this evening. Our next virtual lecture will be January 25th, and it will be Julie Riker, who is well known in the local art community. And she'll be talking about plein air painting along the Susquehanna, especially around Fort Hunter. So I am sure everybody will want to also hear about that very interesting topic come January 25th. And this free registration link is already on the Fort Hunter website. Meanwhile, tonight we are going to hear about dulcimers and dulcimer music, and I am absolutely delighted to introduce Bob Meehan from the St. Thomas Dulcimer Society, who has, along with the society, provided the dulcimer concert for the holidays at Fort Hunter for quite a number of years, as they will be doing this year, as I mentioned. And this is, as I said to our board meeting last night, a presentation you are not going to want to miss, because it is absolutely fascinating. I've had a little preview. And with that, I will turn it over to Bob Meehan. Please, if you have any questions and answers, type them in, or questions to be answered, type them in the chat function, and we will take as many as time permits at the end, but we're not going to be doing them audio version. Type questions in the chat function and we'll get to them at the end. So Bob Meehan.
Okay, I'm going to get up here and share this thing. And we're going to start right here with this first one. Good evening, everybody. Happy to be here tonight. I love talking about dulcimers and dulcimer music and all of the things that go along with it. And so today I thought we'd talk about dulcimers and old time, wait a minute, not old time music, but just its music. We used to start out with a lot of old timey music. I want to say thank you right away to the Friends of Fort Hunter and to Barbara Dennison particularly for the opportunity of coming here to talk with you. There are so many other people that I need to share my thanks and help with, because we all love the dulcimer. Those of us who love the dulcimer want to hear it, and we want to share it with you. I also must call on Katie Shimana, whose patience with my misunderstandings of the Apple MacBook Pro have been legion. She's done a fantastic job, and thank you very much. Okay, the other thing I want to say thank you to is the dedicated players in our group who come to practice every single week. And most of them show up about a half an hour before the practice even begins. I keep trying to get here earlier and earlier, and there are 2 or 3 people always ahead of me. So thank you very much. How did we get started, the St. Thomas Dulcimer Society? We started back in 1970 when I turned 70. And what we tried to do is I wanted to play a couple of dulcimer tunes in church in a Sunday in August when there were only going to be 4 people in the congregation. So we got it together, four of us got together to play the mountain dulcimer. And there were a basket full of people because it was a beautiful day and everybody decided to come to church that day. Afterwards, we were very well received, quite frankly, and then we went on the next couple of times and we tried to try a dulcimer day, and we had people come and actually play the dulcimers that we had, and we had four of them at the time. And we have been growing like Topsy ever since. We got our name because we started out at the St. Thomas Church in Lingelstown. And we also are named again because the village of St. Thomas is now Lingelstown. So you could say we have two names, and we call ourselves the Society so that we can play some fairly fancy songs. Where are we now? We've grown all the way from 4 members, and 50% of the original 4 are still with us. We now have, if everybody has an opportunity to show up, we have people, we're up around 22 members in our group who show up on a regular basis. Every week we can count on about 15 to 17 people. We have people coming from Dillsburg and Lebanon and Mannheim. So people do come from quite a distance just to play with us. It shows their devotion to the beautiful sound of the dulcimer. I have to give special thanks to Wendy Hepler, who is our music director and sometimes spiritual leader. Wendy is the one who keeps us all together when we're starting to learn new songs. And thanks, Wendy, we appreciate it very much. One of the things that you'll probably find is that if you see us in concert, you'll see us wearing jeans. And why do we wear jeans? We started out wearing jeans because it was in the middle of the summer and it was kind of a comfortable thing to wear. But dulcimers actually sound better when they're played on the jeans. Dulcimers are played on the lap. They're called a lap dulcimer often. And the reason that they sound better is unknown to humankind. However, there was a young woman in our group who one morning got up and she grabbed a dulcimer and she was wearing her pajamas and she played a song on the dulcimer while she was wearing pajamas, and then she changed into jeans and she said, you know, Bob, they really do sound better. Ever since then, we've made it a standard to wear jeans when we play. We choose to play mostly old songs, as you could probably imagine, because it is a folk instrument. It originated in Europe, and it is a true American instrument, and we'll talk a little bit about that in a while. But we play older songs because they are a lot of hymns, there are a lot of mountain music, there are a lot of folk music. And mostly we like to play them because they're in the public domain and we don't have to pay for them. Some of our newer songs are arranged by our members and noted dulcimer players, where we can buy books and we can buy online music from these people. The two people that I'd like to mention locally are Dr. Bob Meehan and Roxanne Palmer, both of whom are members of our group. We can rely on Dr. Bob and Roxanne to go ahead and change what we call the dulcimer tab so we know how to play the songs. We've had Tull Glazner, who is a noted teacher of dulcimer music, and he's been with us a couple of times now. One of the things that's interesting about players and teachers is that some teachers teach so that they can play. In Tull's case, he plays so that he can teach. He is very definitely a teacher of dulcimers, and he has this great style about him that works very well. Nina Zanetti is a beautiful player. She's well noted for her music that's used what called finger picking, which is the kind of stuff that you generally would see played with banjos and other instruments like that. Joe Collins is another guy who's a noted player that we use a lot of his music. We use music every place that we can find it, and we have music ranging from the 1600s to the 1800s to about a week and a half ago. There are some famous dulcimer players around. Cyndi Lauper, the rock music person, is a great supporter of dulcimers. Cyndi has been known to say that everything sounds better with a dulcimer accompaniment. Joni Mitchell is another person who has played the dulcimer in concert. It's not necessarily an individual concert instrument because it's a very soft, very smooth, very mellow sounding instrument. David Schnaufer, I'm going to talk a little bit about him. He was a noted player, and I'll talk a little bit more about him in a minute. And then Dolly Parton. Who knew? Dolly Parton is one of the great dulcimer players. She has, and you'll see here, Dolly has a jewel encrusted dulcimer that she's playing at the Grand Ole Opry. My wife and I had an opportunity to go to the Grand Ole Opry about a month or so ago, and it's a wild, wild place. And I can just imagine Dolly playing the dulcimer. I just changed her name to Dulcie. I see her playing the dulcimer at the Grand Ole Opry. I mentioned David Schnaufer. David is a guy who has really had a major influence on dulcimer music. In the 1980s, around about mid of the 1980s, he went to Nashville to the music, because it was a folk song, a folk music instrument. It didn't stand out all by itself in a session or in a band because it's too soft, it's too mild, it's too smooth of an instrument. He, though, was convinced that it would be a featured instrument if it had the right setting. And he went ahead and played all over Nashville and got it well established and was able to get a number of songs that came about for him. Tal Glazner is the guy that I talked about. He is our teacher. He's been with us 2 or 3 times, and he has a great deal of patience. His arrangements are easier to play. He talks to us about how do we shape our chords so that we can move from one chord to the next with the greatest of ease, the greatest possible ease. It's not easy. Next, we have this guy, and you say, wait a minute, that's not a dulcimer player, is it? No, that's John Newton. And John Newton is the fellow who was a slaver and traveled across the Atlantic Ocean on a number of occasions. And he was in the middle of a terrible, terrible, terrible storm one time. And he went through a conversion from being a slave driver to being a true believer. He wrote a book, he wrote a movie. He wrote a song called Amazing Grace. And one of the things is that Amazing Grace is one of those tunes that just sounds beautiful on a dulcimer. It sounds beautiful on bagpipes. It sounds beautiful no matter where you play it. It's been arranged for almost every instrument you can imagine, and it's played by anybody that you can think about. That wasn't the most perfect performance ever, but that does give you an idea of the beautiful sounds that you can come and what you can see when you do this. One of the people who probably had the biggest influence on the bringing the dulcimers out of the back hills of Kentucky and Tennessee and Virginia is Jean Ritchie. She was one of the fine players. She was born in Viper, Kentucky. And she was one of 14 children. And she was the youngest of the 14 children and was forbidden by her dad from playing the dulcimer. But she played it anyway. And the way she played it was the way the originally dulcimers were played, with using a turkey quill and just fretting one of the strings. And I'll talk a little bit about that in a while, but fretting one of the strings. And she did a fast strumming. The problem with that is that sometimes the drones, the other three strings, or two strings rather, will overlook where you are. And oh, there you are. She had a repertoire of over 400 songs, and she probably did more to show how the dulcimer could be played outside of Appalachia than anyone else in her time. She was on the radio. She was the person who wrote the first dulcimer book, interestingly called Dulcimer Book. It's interesting, I think, now to kind of take a moment to look at some of the predecessors, because music has been around since time immemorial. The first one is an épinette de Vosges. It's a French instrument. It's about, 64 inches long, 54 inches long. And on the top of it, you'll see these little marks, and those marks are frets. And there's only 2 or 3 strings that have been fretted. And then the remainder of them are played as drones. So just like a bagpipe, you'll have the bagpipe will have the 1 or 2 chanters, a chanter, and then they'll have several others, that bagpipes that make sounds. The Scheitholt is the German version. And once again, you can see here that it's got 2 strings. Well, I don't know if you can, I hope, but it has 2 strings and that would be fretted. And then the other 2 or 3 or 4 strings would be played as drones. In Sweden, the same thing was done, but it was called a hummel. And again, here they were multiple strings that were fretted for different notes, and many strings that were played as drones. So that one of the problems with that is that since only a few of the strings were fretted, only a few of the strings were devoted to playing the melody. The melody is what most of us recognize as we go through a song. There were up to 6 strings on these instruments, some more, some less, that were played as drones. That meant that each string was tuned to an individual note. And as they were played, they played that note and that note only. The problem with that, as for what I see, is that the melody was often overshadowed by the drones, depending upon how heavily you would strum them. The early dulcimer music, interestingly enough, was played with 1 melody string. Sometimes it was played with 2 melody strings if you wanted it to be a little louder. So 2 strings would be a little louder than an individual 1 string. The other 2 were strings that are on there typically would be the drones. The instruments in our group are, first of all, the mountain dulcimer, because that's what we started with. A banjammer, which is a combination of instruments. There is the standard and bass dulcimer, hammer dulcimer, Celtic harp, and a bowed dulcimer. And then finally, a possum board. Possum boards are interesting creatures. The mountain dulcimer, for some people, it's surprising how few people, or how many people, actually don't know what a mountain dulcimer is. And this is what the front of a mountain dulcimer looks like. It has a fretboard, it has the soundboard. Usually it's a softer material. The fretboard is usually made out of walnut, and I'll talk about that in a bit. And the sound holes allow the beautiful music to escape. The back is sometimes a beauty in and of itself. If you know the people who make the kits that you want to build, and you say it's for me, they'll find a really nice back for you. The mountain dulcimer typically has 3 strings, 4 if you want some extra volume. It's usually tuned to a DAD. That means that the melody string is tuned to a D, the middle string is tuned to an A, and the bass string is tuned to a D. And I'll show you a little bit when we talk about the music later. I'll tell you a little bit more about how that works. It was originally fretted only on the melody string, and then using the turkey quill, like Gene Ritchie did, using the turkey quill, it would flash all over the place. Now, most of the dulcimers are hourglass shaped, and they really are designed that way, and I'll talk about why in just a few minutes. The very earliest versions were teardrop shaped, and so if you imagine an instrument that would look like a teardrop. The next one that we have is called a band jammer. Interestingly enough, when the dulcimer was first coming out from the mountains, it was considered by the music gurus to be a bit of an anomaly, and that it wasn't fit to be played. It was only fit to be hanging on the wall. In fact, there is a dulcimer group called the Off the Wall Dulcimer Group. The band jammer, though, sounds like and plays like a banjo, which was one of the instruments that could stand up to the other bold instruments in a music group. It's played like a dulcimer, meaning it has the same fretboard, and it has a flat body instead of a cased body. It sounds just like a banjo. That was the Dulcimer National Anthem, and it's called Boil Them Cabbage Down, and it's the first song that most people learn how to play. It does, in fact, add an interesting sound to the music that we play. It adds a whole nother layer of interest to our music, because the dulcimer is a very, very soft, very mellow musical instrument. In fact, the word dulcimer comes from the ancient Greek that means a sweet sound. Right now, the banjo is mostly played on a single string because it just seems to overpower everything else. The standard in the baritone dulcimer, you can see here, is a double dulcimer. It has two keyboards, and usually it can be tuned in three different ways. The standard dulcimer sound, which is DAD, and then a baritone, which is a step or two lower, and then finally it could be tuned as a bass instrument. The design always has two different tunings on it, so that the player can switch quickly between the dulcimer melody or a bass melody or a baritone melody, and back and forth, which makes it very interesting. It was also, interestingly enough, developed as a courting dulcimer. Back in the olden days, people didn't have TVs and cars and video games to play, so they would want to be alone, and the parents would take these courting dulcimers that would have the fretboard, one facing in one direction and one facing in the other. And the two young people who would go into a room, the parents would close the door, and they would put the dulcimer on the lap of the two young people. And as long as they could hear the dulcimer being played, they knew that the young people were not doing anything that they shouldn't do until later. The dulcimer, the baritone standard, has a deeper body, so that it has a much richer sound, a stronger sound. It's a big instrument, and it's very heavy to carry around. This is a hammer dulcimer, and the hammer dulcimer is just what it says. It looks to me, or it can be looked at as a piece that, if you just took it out of a piano, you took the guts out of a piano and you put it down and you hit it with those sticks that you see on there, then that would be a hammer dulcimer. Similar instruments to the one that was just shown are existing today in many world cultures. The original one came from Persia in around 1900. That's when it was developed. And from Persia, it spread all over the world. We know that there are some here in Greece, in Italy, in Ireland, China, and there are a great many variations of this. It was first known as the santur in Persia, and it was, I think I should have put a third very, 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 very early predecessor of the piano, because it uses the same techniques of making sounds that a piano does today. These are the various dulcimer hammers, and each one has a very specific use. The one on the extreme left-hand side is just a plain wooden hammer that you hold it in where the black or brown parts are. You hold it there lightly between your two fingers, and then you strike the strings. The next one to the right, number 2, shows a leather insert. Now, number 5, 6, and 7, 8, 9, and 8 and 9 all have leather and or something else, Teflon or some other mechanism on the back, so that you can get different sounds by turning the handle of the dulcimer hammer over. The Celtic harp is one that is really has added so much to the music that we play. It's not a dulcimer, but it sounds so gorgeous. This particular one was made by the Marini family. Both my wife and Carol Barstow play the Celtic harp, and it's a beautiful, beautiful Irish-inspired harp design. And it also has what's known as sharpening levers that are fitting on the side. And I think if I go back, you can see the red or the gold up on the top. I'm pointing at my screen so you can see it. You can see the levers there that will help to change the. Sorry, I went the wrong direction. There you go. It would allow them to play in many keys. With the dulcimer being a diatonic device, we only play in one or two keys. Right now, we play mostly in the key of D. The harps, because our two harpists have been classically trained and they know how to read music, they know how to play music. They are wonderful at helping us to keep with the timing in our devices. They can also fill in what's known as grace notes. The dulcimer sometimes won't hold a note for a really long time, but the music is written where it has either a whole note or a whole note and a rest or a whole note, and there's just a gap that can be in there. And so what happens is the dulcimer, the harpist can fill in with grace notes. Bowed dulcimer, played like a cello, it has a much deeper body, a richer, more mellow sound, and it has the same fretboard as a dulcimer. I mentioned that we play on G's because the dulcimers just sound better. Well, if you use one of these, a possum board, you don't have to worry about that. It's actually an acoustical amplifier. The people up there, up in the Dulcimer Festival, where I first learned about this, said the toughest part of it was finding the possum to stretch over the board. It's placed underneath the dulcimer, and it's allowed, some of them are attached, so they're on there permanently, but what it does is it allows an airspace under the back of the dulcimer so that it has room to do some additional vibrations. I know that we're going to hold off on questions, so if you have questions, go right into the chat function right now, and we'll try to answer them if we can. All right, thank you. I thought it would be interesting to take a look at how do you build a dulcimer, and I'm not going to go into a lot of detail, but I think it's important to see all of the things that are here. This is a dulcimer kit, as you might get it from any one of many dulcimer kit manufacturers. All of the parts are there, and then you take the headstock which is just kind of rough cut, and then you do some finishing on that. As you get better at the woodworking, you make these a little bit fancier by carving them in a little way. You have to glue the headstock to the sides, and I want to call attention to the fact that the sides are kind of small, are kind of thin. They are only about 3/32 of an inch thick. After you've got the headstocks glued on to the sides, excuse me, you then have to shape the dulcimer, and in the middles here, you see 3 very large blocks of wood. Those blocks of wood are glued in temporarily to the sides, and then the sides, excuse me, are squeezed in so that the dulcimer will take on its characteristic shape. Believe it or not, the best tools for holding the filler strip are clothespins. In this particular view, you can see the dark brown, which is the walnut that is the side of the dulcimer, and the very light pine, which is on the inside. And that gives you about twice the glue surface. So when you glue the top or the back to the sides of the dulcimer, it has something to hang on to, and it doesn't make it such a fragile instrument. This is the back of the dulcimer, the inside look at the back of the dulcimer, and this has the strengthening strips or reinforcing strips in there. The 2 sides of this the back are book matched and glued together. This is to help to strengthen that so that the glues, so they don't undo. When you cut the board, the sound holes in the top board, which is usually a softer material, it can be cherry or sassafras or butternut, and any of those softer woods. It can be walnut as well. But what happens is there are some parts that look very fragile and have the potential for breaking off. So you just glue some of the filler strip end pieces in there to keep it from falling apart. Here we're gluing the back onto the dulcimer, and as any woodworker will find out, there's no such thing as having too many clamps. As you saw, the back shape was started out as a rectangle, and so what you do is you to trim the back of it, you use a saw to get through most of it. And then you spend the rest of your time shaving it down with a razor knife, and then you sand it down to the finish. This is shows my messy workshop and the trimmed dulcimer. And at this point, you always want to put a label. Some people like a message to people who might look at it. We put in the who you made it for and who made it and all that kind of thing. It's pretty good. The fretboard is the thing that really is important in developing a dulcimer. The fret material is that big, long, shiny material that you see, and it's hammered in to slots that are made by the kit manufacturer, but you have to install them, and they have to all be at exactly the right height, exactly the same height. They always wind up being a little bit longer and a little bit sharper, meaning they could cut your hands when they're done, and they all have to be sanded down. And then the ends of each one of those frets has to be filed and sanded down so that it won't give you a hard time when you try to play it. This is what the dulcimer back looks like prior to a finish. It's smooth. By this time, you've run about a 400 grit sandpaper over it so it can be as smooth and beautiful as possible. That's all cleaned up, and then you spray paint it. No, you don't spray it. You just use a lacquer spray to go onto the back, and it just comes up to be such this beautiful, the image comes out, it looks gorgeous. And this is what we go back to that first one that we saw earlier. And this is what a finished dulcimer looks like. From start to finish, it takes, if you're going to do it right, it takes about a month to do it. And my charge for building a dulcimer for you is that I get to play the first song. What's interesting here, in my way of thinking, is that this is the dulcimer fretboard, and going from the left to the right, at the left-hand side, there's a slot, and you'll see in there, that's where you put what's called the nut, and that's where the strings go through at the near the tuning machines. The frets are interestingly named 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. And then just to make it really confusing, they throw in a 6.5 for you when you weren't looking. Most of the dulcimer music is played in the upper 2/3 of the instrument. And when you get to the last 2/3, the right-hand 2/3, the sound is very high and it's awfully hard to reach. We don't like those sounds. I thought it might be interesting then, since we've looked at the dulcimer fretboard, and we see what it looks like, and we see where the frets are. I thought it might be interesting if we talked about what do you do with that. So what we have here in this music is called a tabbed set of music, and this is what we use. The dulcimer is also said to be one of the easiest instruments, stringed instruments, to learn how to play that there is. The way that you play this instrument is you have there are strings that are represented by the lines. The line on the bottom is D, and that's the melody string. The line in the middle is the A, it's tuned to the A, and then the topmost line is the bass line, and that's tuned to a D. Most of the songs that we play in the St. Thomas Dulcimer Society today are in the key of D, which would be D-A-D tuning on here. If you look at the music and you want to know how to play it, you can see that there is the real music signature up above on the top line. You'll see that it's said 3/4 time, which gives us an idea of how you want to play it. The 3/4 time is traditionally the waltz time. In order to get the sound that you want, you press your finger down on fret number 2 on the melody string. That would be the lowest most one. And you strum all the way across. There's a 2-0-0 at that very first notation. And what that tells you is that you only push down on the string, the melody string, the one that's got the number on it. And then the other two are played open, and that's a D chord. The next one you put is an E, and that's where you press your finger down on the 1. And then there's you take your finger off and you get the third note, which is just the open string, open melody string. Where you don't see other sounds, other symbols on the strings, you don't play those strings. So in this case, you play 3 strings, 1 string, 1 string. Then you go back, play 3 strings, 1 string, 1 string. In this particular instance, what you would find is that there is the second string, in the second measure, you would press down your finger on the bass string. That would be the one that's furthest away from you. And then you strum all the way across. And then you go to the middle string and you press that one down at fret number 2. And then you play that, and then you have the next one. And then I won't go through every one of these, but the next measure, you would press down, one finger would press down on the 3rd fret on the bass string, and on the 1st fret, you would press down the middle and the melody string, and then you would strum all the way across. And each time you would get the chord that you were looking for. What's interesting, I think, here is that many of the songs that we play now are what's called chord melodies. So there'll be some songs some parts of the song that will just play 1 or 2 notes on 1 or 2 strings, and then there will be a chord. Oftentimes, as in this particular song, the chord starts the measure, and then the melody falls on that. I hope that small amount of discussion is enough to say, gee, that's kind of cool. This is the St. Thomas Dulcimer Society in its full array, although many of our people don't like to wear white shirts anymore. But I thought it would be interesting for you to hear what we sound like. So here's us in performance at a home in at a older community in Mannheim. The next song that I wanted you to hear, just so that you can hear something a little bit different, that was a little bit slower song. This one's a little bit quicker. A couple of our members had an opportunity to travel to Australia, and when those people came back, the group had learned how to play this song, "Waltzing Matilda," and it was our wake up, our start up, warm up song for the longest while. And here's "Waltzing Matilda." And here's just a small taste of our Christmas concert that's coming up on in December. If there are any questions, please type them into the chat function and be more than delighted to answer them. And finally, in this whole idea of shameless self-promotion, our next performance is at the Centennial Barn at Fort Hunter on December the 6th, and it's 6:30, not 7 p.m. And I think that kind of finishes it up. Did I finish on time? I did, 45 minutes. How about?
That was great, Bob, and we thank you. Your video is muted, so you might want to put yourself back on the screen so we can thank you properly.
Oh, how did I do that?
Down at the bottom left,
Oh yeah,
where it says video. There you
yeah.
go.
Oh, there I are.
There you are.
Yes. I hope that was okay for everybody.
Well, I think it's wonderful, and I was first introduced to hammer dulcimer and then regular dulcimer way back in high school.
Yep.
So, I learned a lot from watching you. I don't see any questions.
Uh-oh,
Which,
that must mean I talk too much.
no, I actually thought it meant that you explained everything. So, no possibly had a question left. And you mentioned some people went to Australia and you played in a senior center or something in Mannheim. And at the church, which is St. Thomas United Church of Christ, there on Lingelstown Road, right past the square. Where else do you play?
Well, we play at Fort Hunter each year for the Fort Hunter Day. This year we kind of got rained out. That was a terrible day. And we played the Christmas concert for a number of years. We've played at several different churches around the area. We've played at a retirement home. We've played at an over 50 community. We've played at the local UCC home to people who just kind of enjoy our soft, slow music. Yeah, and we pretty much will go ahead and play wherever anybody who has the patience to invite us.
And are there international opportunities like festivals or?
There actually are. There are a large number of festivals, and as you could probably guess, since you've gone to this format since COVID, there were several festivals that were around the country that have ceased being, and they now are being set up as what's called quarantine. So they were played during when everybody was being quarantined, and they're now up to quarantine. I think it's 11 now, and they now have people who are instructors that are literally all around the world. They were the last one I know of. They had 2 or 3 instructors from Great Britain that were teaching classes, and they go an hour at a time, and each class is a relatively low cost, and the instructors can have 20 or 30 people in their class, and there's usually 2 or 3 days worth of ways to do it. Slowly but surely, we're getting more and more people who are ready to start having in-person festivals, but it's still few and far between.
Few and far between. And if someone was interested in joining your group or learning more about your group, they could contact, well, they could look you up online.
Yeah.
Dulcimer Society or contact Fort Hunter. We could give you.
Yeah, I'd be happy to talk to people. We have people of all different abilities. We have some people. I'm looking here, and I see Sandy Barbie out there, and we have her and Roxanne, who are really some of the excellent players. Dr. Bob Bakelar is a wonderful, wonderful player, and so but we have also, and you may have, if you just noticed in the Christmas song, we were playing Jingle Bells, there was another young lady who she's 24 years old and loves to play the dulcimer. So we have people from all different ages. There are, and all different abilities. I think they just let me play because I started, because I'm not a very good player.
I'm sure you're underestimating yourself. I do know the Susquehanna Folk Society that also plays sometimes at Fort Hunter.
Yes.
Has had dulcimer music. I do know.
Yeah. They've played it. They've had it with the Seasons, who was really a lovely professional group. We have not yet been invited to play at with the Susquehanna Folk Festival, and that's probably a pretty good thing.
It's okay. Everybody has their space. We are getting some comments and thanking you, how enjoyable it was, much appreciated. People hope to get to the show.
Okay.
And, we will remind you again, 6:30 on December 6th, yep. Wednesday night, Centennial Barn, in person, not online, and it's inside, so it can't get rained out like Fort Hunter Day did. So
yeah,
the barn does have heat and lights and a bathroom and all those comforts of home. It's you've never been. It's not a barn.
Yeah,
it's the old days when it was a barn.
It's a beautiful location, and we take we have about 17 people that come to that performance, and we can make some nice sounds, I think.
You mean performers? They get more audience than 17 people. I want everybody to understand that.
We did have a bunch of people who were there to hear us a couple of years ago, BC, before COVID.
And if you're not familiar with holidays at Fort Hunter, besides that particular concert, there are various events on Saturdays and Sundays most of the time, starting November 25th all the way through Sunday, December 17th. And different things on different days. Some things are each weekend, some things, the craft reunion is only Friday, Saturday, Sunday, December 2nd through 4th. The tea is only on Sunday, December 3rd by reservation only, as well as the reindeer is only on Saturday, December 9th. But the Festival of Trees, Fort Couture, what else? The kids' holiday shop is on multiple weekends. So you can go to forthunter.org and look up all of that information, and it's all available to anyone. And we hope to see you at Fort Hunter during the holidays. And I want to say thank you to everyone. And don't forget to sign up for the January 25th lecture. By January, you're going to be looking for something to do. You know, the holidays will be over, and then you'll be in those winter doldrums. And you will see some lovely paintings, and hopefully also hear about how painting happens, plein air painting, outdoor painting along the Susquehanna by Fort Hunter. So thank you everyone for joining us tonight, and good evening.
So long.